Let's go, girls. Welcome to Talk Wealthy to Me. I'm Michelle Taylor, founder of Women in Wealth. From breaking money myths to building wealth and achieving financial freedom, we're here to empower you to create your own path. Talk Wealthy. Now, join the conversation and let's change the way women think and feel about money. Okay, ready? Today's guest is Colette Jane Fehr, a licensed psychotherapist specializing in couples therapy and a nationally recognized relationship expert whose work has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Oprah Daily. She is the author of the newly released book, The Cost of Quiet: How to Have the Hard Conversations That Create Secure, Lasting Love. It was just released in early February with Penguin Random House. Colette also co-hosts the podcasts Insights from the Couch and Love Thy Neighbor, which is a relationship show. And her 2025 TEDx talk, Secrets of a Couples Therapist, was a TEDx editor's pick. What drew me to her work is this idea that staying quiet in our relationships often costs us more than we realize, not just emotionally, but financially. Not just in connection, but in confidence. And for so many women, silence can slowly erode both love and wealth. Today, we're talking about what it really costs to stay quiet, how hard conversations shape secure relationships, and why finding your voice is one of the most powerful things you can do for your future. Colette, welcome to Talk Wealthy to Me. So today on Talk Wealthy to Me, I am joined by Colette, and I'm so excited to have you here. And it's such perfect timing because we are in February. And I think that the work that you do in one facet of your career is very appropriate for us to talk about. So
absolutely.
Thanks for being on. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. And I just have to say, I love the name of the podcast.
Thank you.
I couldn't love it more. I wish someone would talk wealthy to me.
Right?
So I'm Colette Jane Fehr. As you mentioned, I am a couples therapist, an author. I'm a podcast host. I'm a media contributor. I do too many things right now to keep track of myself. But first and foremost, I'm a therapist. I really love working with people. And I just wrote a brand new book called The Cost of Quiet: How to Have the Hard Conversations That Create Secure, Lasting Love. And of course, one of the most important conversations we have to have in relationships is around money. And those are the ones we're typically not having.
So anybody that's listening knows we talk about this all the time. And I'm excited to dive in on the relationship component of that because there's so many different ways we can approach this in a relationship, but also just the cost of quiet with women. I'm telling the listeners all the time, with your girlfriends at happy hour, if you hear something or you have a question about money, ask it. We've got to take the taboo away from talking about money. But that may be even a little bit of a harder hurdle to make because I think that on the financial side, it feels like something that everyone already knows they should be talking about and aren't.
Yep.
So how much or how many of the clients that you have seen in your career are coming to you in a relationship where there's a financial sticking point? Is it half? Is it little? Is it more than half?
I would say maybe about half. But I think what's interesting about, in terms of what we're focusing on, but always, even though money is often an issue and it's often avoided, you know, my book is specifically about that we avoid not just financial conversations, but we avoid conflict. We avoid sharing our feelings. And I give these top 10 ways that we avoid, in particular, women. I really wrote the book for women because I was noticing all of these very emotionally intelligent, communicative women in my office who had a very similar story to mine. Like, obviously, I'm not a very quiet person. So quiet's a euphemism for really avoiding the hard conversations. But same thing with these women. They're not talking about money if it's an issue. They're not talking about their real feelings and needs in these pivotal moments because conflict can feel like a threat to our attachment bond. And we end up going silent or bickering instead of opening up about our feelings or minimizing and dismissing our own needs before they even get a chance to be articulated. So I really wanted to give people a format for no matter what's bothering you in the relationship, whether it's I'm scared to talk about money, sex, which is another big one.
Huge.
Like money, or just even the little day-to-day grievances, which is a big
nuances
part
that you think are so cute and charming before you get married. And then in year 7, you're like, why do you do that? Why do you itch your ear that way? Like
the things that draw us are the things that later repel and frustrate us. And what I notice is, let's say even money is a big issue and somebody comes in and says, we can't agree on spending, which I would say that's the most common thing, is different spending styles. And I could certainly delve into that. But it's really the day-to-day stuff that goes unaddressed. Like your partner left something out on the counter that you asked them to put away. That's the kind of stuff that we end up digging into, because underneath those small grievances are attachment needs, fears, insecurities, and longings. And that's what I want to help people get to, being able to name how you feel and say, hey, I need reassurance that you value me, that what I have to say is important, that I still matter to you. So underneath the hood, it tends to go to all the same core thing, and it's all so deep. And then, of course, these subjects like money, we just tend to stay away from, because people have this feeling that no matter how I approach this, it's going to lead to an argument. And there's a difference between destructive conflict and healthy conflict. And if we know how to do these conversations right, this method I give in the book, Self-Connected Communication, then we can talk about anything from money to why you left the damn thing on the counter, even though I asked you 15 times to move it. And we can invite connection instead of getting into distance.
Okay, so I'm all in. I think that anybody that's listening, that, anybody's going to find value in that. But anybody that's married, I'm thinking, check, 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 check.
Exactly.
All of these things that I think is human nature that we fall victim to. When you, and obviously we'll focus on the money part first, but when you're talking to a couple, it is hard, because it's just like how we approach so many things in our lives. It's like the little things that we have picked up along the way, habits, good or bad, our experiences are what shape our relationship with money. So then you put two people together that are, in traditional sense, supposed to manage this one thing and be on the same page. And it's like, but if you came from an affluent background and I came from a family where we didn't have any money, how can we approach this from a common ground? So I love that you break it all down and give somebody the tools and resources on how to unpack it and realize it's not about the little thing. It's about that thing that happened that you've carried with you.
Exactly. So first of all, the dichotomy you spoke of there is an issue I have in my own marriage. Like I've been remarried. I talk about a lot. Let me just back up for a second. My book, my origin story of my first marriage, because I really lost my voice, like so many, even the most powerful women do. We're nurturers. We want our relationships to work. And when you love someone, it's really this hard thing to bring up a thing you feel like is going to lead to an argument when you want the bond to be good.
Yeah.
But that's the thing that ends up sabotaging it. And I ended up divorced for that very reason, because I wasn't speaking up. I was self-silencing. It's not my personality. So that led me to become a couples therapist. And I've been doing this work for almost 14 years, which led me to write the book. But I've now been remarried for 10 years, with my husband for more than 13 years. And we have a really secure relationship in many ways, but we do have a lot of money issues for exactly the reason you said. We grew up very differently. Different parts of the country, different levels of affluence, different spending habits. And then there's a lot of the way I existed in my first marriage, which was at a much different socioeconomic level, how that makes my husband feel about my expectations.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then the fact that, in my first marriage, I was very traditional. My ex-husband made a lot of money. We chose for me to stay home with the kids. My kids were small. And when I got divorced, I had to go back to work and start from scratch. I mean, I had no money. I had no career to fall back on. And I went to graduate school. It took a long time. Now, in this current marriage, we're both earners. We keep our money separate. We pay household expenses together. So it's a completely different power balance. I mean, there's so much in all of this. And then you add to those issues that underneath it is our core attachment needs again. When we have a conversation about what we're going to spend on a vacation and I see your face tighten and your eyebrow go up, not only is it the issue, but then it's my fear that maybe I'm not lovable if I push back too much, or that I'm going to push you away, or I'm too much, or I'm not enough.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Well, and it's so, I mean, it just is such a good reminder to all of us that marriage is not for the faint of heart. It's the best thing. It's so much fun. I remember when I first got married thinking, wait, so every time we go somewhere like a date night or vacation, we go back to the same place. It's like a sleepover with your person forever and it's fun, but it's a lot of hard work. And you have to put in the effort to unpack all of the things. And when it comes to money, you know, in my scenario, I have to check myself all the time because I was raised with, you know, two awesome parents, but my mom instilled in me, because my parents got divorced, like, whatever you want, go out and get that life. Don't look for somebody to give you the life. So now that's always how I've approached things. And I have to remind myself that when I go and buy something that I want, I don't ask permission, and that feels really good. And then
amen to that.
If my husband orders, he has a thing, there's certain things that he loves, like all of us, but let's say they're something so silly, sunglasses, or he loves shoes like I do. And if he starts ordering them and I see them coming in, I always think, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
Another pair of shoes? And then
Actually, my husband is a compulsive shoe buyer. It's so funny
well,
you
I
say
am
that.
too, so we work really well together. But
it's just so random.
I know, but it made me stop and say, okay, wait a minute. But this is actually like the exact thing that I try and coach women around.
Yeah.
I can't do that. So I think that it's just this self-awareness that it comes to us all naturally, these things, and we have to remind ourselves, don't do that. So babe, if you're listening and I do this to you again, just say, I heard you on that episode and mind your own business about when I'm buying shoes.
So this is a great example though. And this is the kind of stuff I unpack in the book, because a little thing like that, you see the shoes coming in, right? This is the kind of stuff that are what I call triggers. They're not necessarily huge trauma triggers. They can be, but mostly it's the mundane day to day. We feel a little surge of emotion or activation.
Just push it down.
Exactly. And that's really what the quiet is. You push it down. But
until
when
it's a tsunami.
Right. Because it stacks up inside. We create a story because the brain is a meaning-making machine. And usually the story is what I call the negative partner story, because the brain is also wired to run negative for survival reasons.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we come up with a negative interpretation. And if we don't approach our partner and first do the work inside of us to access our adult self, get very clear on what we're feeling and why. And then we can come forward to that person and say, hey, when I saw that third pair of shoes come in the other day, I really felt this charge of like frustration inside. And I got curious about it. And I want to share a little bit about it with you. I'm not coming at you. I really want to talk to you about me and my own reaction and what that means. And I don't know what it meant for you. But if you got curious inside, and maybe you actually know,
I know,
then you could come forward with that really clear, honest, vulnerable message. So what was it? What was the meaning to you of seeing that? Like, even if it's the negative story of the moment, like, what did you think to yourself?
So I spend a lot, this is so deep, y'all, so get ready. But, you know, traditional marriage roles don't exist in our family, where I'm the one that is going out to do a lot of things. And sometimes I have to sacrifice like being home for bedtime. And my husband is an absolute rock star, incredible partner in a lot of ways, but that way specifically, we really approach it very much as a team. Now, I think personally, I look at that. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is so your chance to see me being very vulnerable, because
I love it.
I know that it's because I think, oh my gosh, I am valuing more the sacrifices that I'm having to make to go out and do the big things and get the, you know, always be on and dealing with so many additional parts of being a business owner, and he doesn't. He is in a traditional 9 to 5 usually. So I think that there's that little bit of like, maybe because I'm working more of the strenuous role, that I deserve to spend a little more freely than he does. And I know that that's not right.
Yeah, but that's your rational mind. In the moment,
you're like,
we lose all of that. And so a part of you in that moment doesn't represent necessarily how you feel about your husband or the relationship globally. But in that moment, there's like a surge of almost like resentment or like, this isn't fair. Or
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I had a guest on the show that if you two do not know each other, you need to. But it was an episode that came out this month, and she spoke a lot about what a gift and opportunity is, that when you get that feeling of ick, to check yourself, because it's an opportunity to grow and learn and figure out where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved that, because in that regard, we were talking about like the PTO. And some moms love to go into the PTO. Some moms don't and would rather just write a check. And I said, I'm one of those people. If I can support the teacher by providing paper instead of going in, that's what I want to do. And she said, and if anybody listening goes, oh my gosh, of course, Michelle would rather do it this way. I'd rather do it this way. And that's like a question about your issue with money.
Right.
And why does it happen? And
so this is
very similar.
Yes. So whatever feeling comes up in you in relation to someone else is more about you. And that's also how we have to approach our partner. This is about me. Your behavior was the trigger for me, but we neutralize it, right? So what we tend to do instead is we accuse and blame by throwing our story at someone. Like, I'll just make something up. You left the shoes by the door because you don't care about me and what I need.
And
right?
Perception is reality.
Exactly. And that's my story, and it may feel true, but this leaves the other person with really no room but to get defensive or dismissive, which are the biggest conversations shutdowns around.
Yeah.
Instead, if I go and say, when you left the shoes by the door, I felt hurt and frustrated. And the story in my mind is that you don't care. You're not listening to me. Can we check that out, right? Can you reassure me that what I'm sharing with you does matter and explain why you did this thing? We leave room for the person to actually speak for themselves, because those shoes on the floor, and this is an example I get into in my book from my own life. It drives me crazy that I have this very expensive shoe piece of furniture in my front hall, 4 shoes, that my husband leaves the shoes on the floor, and I'm a neat freak. So it's a major trigger for me, but it's about me. It's about the need for organization as how I cope with my own anxiety that goes back all the way to when I was a kid and my parents were getting divorced, and I would clean and re-clean my room. Oof, right? Everything goes deep. Our triggers are old wounds, but they don't have to sabotage the relationship if we know this is normal. We're self-aware, we're attuned to our emotions, and we go to our partner saying, hey, I got triggered. I want to tell you about it, but it's not about you. It's more about me. I'm willing to share my inner world with you and what I feel and what I need if you're willing to listen. That's a total game changer.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, as we kind of shift into the next thing I want to talk to you about, your book, for any of you all listening, I think, how cool would it be? I talk about money dates, but how cool would it be to say, hey, I got us this book and we're both going to read it because it's going to be a game changer. And then like having a date night we do date night every Wednesday night, but like saying, hey, let's read chapters 1 through 3 and then let's unload on each other about all of the things. That might be fun. So
I love the idea. And I really did, even though in my heart, I wrote it for women. I talk about in the book that this book's for everyone. And I'm finding already, it's only been out a short time, men are telling me I really loved it. It's a very compassionate book, and it's a very practical, actionable way to communicate in ways that don't get you into dead-end arguments and get you into connected conversations.
Well, yeah, because if only one person reads the book, then it's only possibly going to work,
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, ideally, both of you embrace this method.
Perfect storm.
But the cool thing, and I do want to just make this point because part of my mission, obviously, I want the people who care about their relationships to have better ones. But the most important point of my book is that the relationship you have with yourself matters more than anything. So when I talk about creating secure attachment, this process I give called self-connected communication, you're really giving yourself soothing, emotional regulation, validation, nurturing, all of that before you even get into these conversations because you are the adult that you really need. And when your relationship is secure with you, we as women are at our best. We're confident, we're empowered, and then we're less reliant on our partner's response. Because the reality is, even when we're doing our job to be vulnerable and clear, we're not always going to get the response we want. And no partner's able to be emotionally available all the time anyway. And some aren't able to be emotionally available at all, no matter what we do. So I just want to say that like the biggest thing I want people to get out of this that I've changed in my own life is how I take care of me internally.
Amen. And that's why, with Women in Wealth and Talk Wealthy to Me and everything this month, it's February and people are talking about all of the relationship stuff, but I wanted to focus also on that point specifically. Figure out how to have a great relationship with you because that will lead to your friends and your spouse and your kids.
Yes, it permeates everywhere.
Everywhere. So one of the things that you said, and I like to always say this first, there is no right or wrong rule to how to approach finances in a marriage.
Yep.
But what you mentioned, the method that you all use, for anyone listening, I think if you're curious how to do something better, this one for me is a banner, big winner approach. And that is everybody, even though you may be bringing in different salaries, I love the idea of everybody having their own money.
Me too.
And it's separate, and that's okay. You should still have visibility and talk about it, but also, and then having like that joint account that kind of runs
the house,
your life. Yeah. And for some people, they want it all combined. In my, I'm always an open book. In our marriage, it's one account that's the household account and that's it. And there's other savings and stuff, but everything comes into one. But I know a lot of people that are really successful that don't do that. And when I say successful, I don't mean the amount of money, but I think that they're success around managing finances.
Yeah.
So I think for all of you listening, figuring out what works for you and your spouse is more important than trying to fit into a method. But you have to have the conversations on how you're going to approach things. And
you have to have it more deeply.
You do.
Bring the emotions into it too.
I was just going to say that because people will say, oh, we talked about money and, he doesn't like debt, neither do I. Well, whatever it is, no. What we mean by the big conversations when you're not married, it's even a better time to have these, but how do you approach money? How do you approach spending?
Saving.
What matter? Yeah. Right. Like, women, and I hate to make a blanketed, assumption, but I've got 12 years of experience and thousands of women to back this up. Most of us have too much cash on hand. So if you look at something like that, even as simply as, hey, I was raised in a family where they worked really hard and my parents told me don't have debt and save everything. And there might have been no trauma around money, but that's the money story you learned. And then your husband comes in or your partner and says, well, that doesn't work for me. We only need 10 grand. And I say to clients all the time, what expense, what emergency is $30,000, truly. So it's really important to have those kind of conversations at the next level. Yeah. How do you feel about cash? How do you feel about investing? Yeah. Do we want to have somebody investing for us? Do you love to do it and want to do it? If that's the case, I want to know what's going on. All of these will save so many people from arguments and heartache, you know?
Yeah. And you have to know how to have these conversations in terms of your own ability to emotionally regulate. And that means that your nervous system is what I call connected to your sage self. That's your wise, loving adult. And when you're in that place, you're grounded, you're able to be curious and hear your partner's money story, your partner's fears, because we know money activates so much fear for people. That's what's underneath a lot of these arguments that go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're able to come from your sage self and say, hey, the other day when I saw, $1,000 leave the checking account, and I'm making this up, and you hadn't mentioned it to me, right? I got panicked. Exactly. And I spent some time sitting with it. And what I realized is my story was that we're spending and like, we're not going to be okay if there's an emergency. And it made me want to go and yell at you because I thought we agreed we'd, tell each other about big expenditures. Yep. But instead, I'm coming to you to tell you I feel afraid and I'm confused by why you did something that we had agreed differently. Can you help me understand where you're coming from? Mm-hmm. Now, you can't do that if you're not grounded. If you lead out of your fear, your anger, you're going to be in that story of like, I can't believe he did this. We agreed on this. Why did you do that?
Ready for a fight.
Exactly. You're going to lead with blame, accusation, you're going to be dysregulated, and then we're never going to get to the part of the money story and the money fear that we need to.
Because you're too busy arguing about the stuff that doesn't matter.
Right. You're at the surface and you're in the reactivity. So these are the conversations, those little things. We don't want to swallow it and just go and stew because that's the pathway to the relationship
breakdown.
Exactly. And we don't want to lead with reactivity, but we want to say, hey, that upset me. And I want to share with you what it is about me that opened up.
Well, and think about it even this way. And I think that fundamentally the easiest way to avoid all of this is, again, just not being quiet about these conversations. Because look at private education, right? Now, I went to a high school that was definitely a public school. And for any of my friends listening that went to Forest Hill High School in South Florida, it was not an easy school. Yeah. I got a great education. Now, that could have done two things for me. I could have grown up thinking, I will do anything I can to make sure that my kids go to a private school. Or I could say, I feel like I've, had a great career and I did it and it exposed me to the real world. And I'm going to make sure that my kids do the same thing. Yeah. No answer is right. But if you have two people that have differing answers, those are the kind of conversations that I think we're trying to say are important fundamentally. I always say, even like with having babies, people say, oh, I want kids. Oh, perfect. I want kids. Well, great. We're a perfect match. Well, I look at my own story. Having gone through leukemia, we had to go through IVF. Now, if my husband had said, I desperately want kids, but I'm not doing the whole IVF thing, but that was something that was important to me, well, then that's a conversation that we may have thought on the surface we were aligned, but we weren't. So you got to dig deeper.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that the research tells us 69% of a couple's problems are unsolvable. Mm-hmm. They're rooted in family history, differences that are in our personality. We're just not going to change our mind. I'm always going to be a neat freak. I'm always going to be someone who wants to spend in the moment and enjoy life when maybe the other partner wants to save, which is so often the case. And the fact that these problems aren't solvable isn't such a problem necessarily. Yes, it's the approach. So when you have the deeper conversation and you share emotions and you explain where you're coming from and what's important to you and what you feel insecure about, that vulnerability invites vulnerability. And when we hear each other out and we have a safe, connected conversation, then things have a way of just working themselves out. Wow, I didn't know that was important to you because of this. You know what? I have some room to compromise there now that I understand. It doesn't mean as much to me as it does you. Or we continue to disagree and not like something about each other. But because we're connected and we both share, it doesn't jeopardize the attachment bond in the relationship. Mm-hmm. So I just want to say to people too, even if you and my husband and I are never going to agree on money. Let me just throw myself on this for a second. It is going to be an issue forever. My husband grew up on a farm in Kentucky. He's 62 years old. I'm 52. I grew up in a very affluent area, like the Greenwich, Connecticut, outside of New York City area. I went to a private school where everybody was so incredibly wealthy that I had such a skewed idea of money. I thought money grew on trees. I was raised with no clue. And I ended up becoming completely broke and really, really like going through terrible financial crisis after my divorce and having to learn from the ground up what I wish I had learned when I was young.
Yeah.
And I lost all my wealth. And it's the best thing that ever happened to me because now I do understand money.
You learn through it. Yeah.
I learned I'm responsible. I would never, the cluelessness I had actually blows my mind, and it wasn't a good thing. But at the same time, I'm still shaped by my upbringing. And I grew up in a family that was very enjoy the moment. My husband could have a gazillion dollars in the bank, and we don't. But if we did, he would still have like a scarcity, fearful mindset. He's a CFO. Anytime we go to dinner, he's like, oh, they charged us $3 for your egg white. I'm like, who cares?
But he does.
But he does. And it annoys the crap out of me. And I'm not saying anything he doesn't already know. So we're not going to change, but we don't have to let that jeopardize our relationship because we talk about it in a healthy way. We give space for each other's differences. And we've learned not to see those differences as so threatening, even though we know sometimes we're going to butt heads. Like we plan a trip to Italy. I want to do it differently from how he wants to do it.
Yeah, I will say.
He wants to save every damn receipt. Yeah.
I have, and everyone knows I'm obsessed with Italy. And now,
me too.
Guys, she's obsessed with Italy. So
obsessed.
Yes. But I think what you just said is so, important. And that is, it's not going to ever change. It's how we approach it. And you guys, if you're anything like me, you're sitting here listening to her talk and how Colette is wording things and thinking, yeah, we're not going to talk like that because she's done all of the work. And
but
I think
you will if you read my book.
That's what I was going to say. So the tools are out there. And one of the easiest things is when you say, this made me feel instead of this is why. It's those little things that you need help understanding.
I statements, I feel instead of you. That's like the biggest thing, right?
It's those little tips are the things that we innately don't know. And that's where.
And they're not instinctive. No. They're just not instinctive. Human beings, our instinct is to react and like be off to the races, negative and talking about what the other person is doing to us. But we can flip it around. And like you said, there are tools to do this that are more simple than you think. And once you start to have these conversations in a different way, it's so much easier and it feels so good. I see it in my office every day that it becomes more of the default. It's like an emotional muscle and it really feels good.
Before, I want to hear more about your origin story and all the money, but I do want to say, guys, also one of the things that keeps kind of coming up is you don't have to understand or be in alignment with what you want your money to do, but you need to understand the why. And I tell people this all the time, whether they're the woman or the man or the person that, it doesn't matter. What matters is that both of the people in the relationship understand the why. So if you're like, I don't care about private school or I want to travel and do it in the way that is very bougie and the other person doesn't, when you're building out the financial plan of your life, as long as you understand the whys, maybe for the person that doesn't want to travel, they want to make sure their kids are in private school. And that's where if you have the common plan together, you can say, listen, I don't care if he travels this way and I travel this way because what's important to the other person is also being met. So it's like being, like my dad always said, be true to your school. And if your school is that thing, as long as you guys are communicating and building a plan that feels good to both of you, you're going to be okay with it, I think, because where that comes from, like, don't buy the shoes or don't do this, it's because maybe you think that something that's important to you isn't going to happen as a byproduct. So if you're having the conversations and the plan is in place, whatever matters to each of you is being acknowledged and worked towards, then it's like whatever makes him happy or her happy.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. And I think in certain exchanges with my husband, I've had to say, okay, I understand that this is important to him, this way of like counting every cent. And frankly, I've accepted influence from him, which is a big thing for couples.
Mm-hmm.
He's really made me so much more fiscally responsive. I've become more of a saver. I've gotten more conscientious. It's been good for me. And at times in the moment, it can also feel suffocating. Yeah. And I joke with him, I'm like, oh, let's pop the joy balloon by like counting how much we spent. So I've got to sometimes be able to say, hey, honey, in this moment, right? Like here we are in Sicily looking out at the sea. For me, you are free to feel how you feel, but for me, I would appreciate it so much if we could not talk about itemizing the bill in this moment, because that would make me feel a little bit stressed, right? I don't have to make him wrong. What's important to him is important to him. He's not bad or wrong for that, but it also can affect me. Right. We're in a relationship. So I have to vocalize what I need in this moment.
Give me this moment.
Yes. Like, can we? And that's a real example pulled from our last trip to Sicily. Now, what he might need to say to me is, hey, Colette, I want you to enjoy this trip. And I know you and I are different. I respect that. And could we agree that we're only going to spend X amount and have a budget for the trip? And we did do this.
And it helped.
Yes. And we had a very clear idea of what we were going to spend in advance, which allowed him to relax as much as he can around money and allowed me to feel like I'm free.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Communicating.
All roads go there.
I know, right? It makes it, it's so easy. It's not, but it sounds it. So, okay, you talked a little bit about your upbringing, and obviously I knew a little bit. What do you think was your biggest surprise coming up through one of the most affluent areas of the country, having that experience, and then seeing the total opposite of that? Was there a moment where you're like, holy hell, I didn't realize that this was this much money, or that this happened, or that debt, if not paid off every month, turned into this? Did you have a moment like that, like of a big surprise?
I did. And I will just be totally vulnerable here in the hopes that it helps somebody. That after I got divorced, I was 31 years old. I married someone who was a financial advisor and made a lot of money at a young age. So I went from one wealthy environment. I went to a college where everybody was like a trust fund kid. Mm-hmm. And that didn't help. And then I got married. I quit my job. I'd only worked for a couple of years. So I was clueless.
And then very traditional role.
Very traditional role that I bought into. Even though my mom was an attorney, my dad was the breadwinner in the family. So my mom was educated. And where I grew up, everyone got educated, but then women didn't really work. It was like a nice to have kind of thing.
Well, and they went to college to meet their husbands typically.
Right.
Or could be.
Right. So when I got divorced, I didn't end up getting a lot of money out of the situation. And that was for a variety of reasons, including my own fear of advocating for myself as I should have. And I ended up having to file a bankruptcy after a couple of years out of my divorce because I couldn't even manage my own finances. I just had no clue what I was doing. I didn't file like the homestead thing when I bought a house. My pipes, I lived in Maitland. They were all old copper. They rusted. I had to spend $8,000 getting PVC pipes. Like I just was a financial disaster. Mm-hmm. And I ended up filing a bankruptcy. I was humiliated. I felt so deeply ashamed. I felt confused. I couldn't figure it out for a while. So there was just a lot there that I started to look at my upbringing and think, if you never leave that little gilded cage, then great. But I got thrown out of the bubble. And again, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, which is easier to say in retrospect. Sure. I've never been like a money statusy person, but I think when you're in a certain environment where everyone has a lot of money, like I thought I was very, very middle class. I didn't know that the whole world didn't live like that. And it's embarrassing even to say that. Yeah. That was all I knew. So I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I had to learn from the ground up. Like in my 30s, I was in nursery school for finances. Mm-hmm. And the good news is, by working for myself, starting my own business, making peace with the bankruptcy, not shaming myself and saying, okay, I messed up and I'm going to learn from this.
Yeah.
Now I have a great retirement account. I do keep my money separately from my husband, even though we have like a joint account for the mortgage. I am very responsible. I have never not paid my credit card bill in the 20 years, no, probably about 16 years since I actually did the bankruptcy. My credit card bill is paid in full every month. I don't hold any debt. I think some of that is like fear from trauma from that experience. But I learned, as we often do, through mistakes, failure, and suffering, and I'm better for it. But I want my daughters, and I think they've grown up differently.
That's where I was going next.
Yeah. I mean, my daughters are in their 20s. They have their dad. They've grown up seeing me. I'm a therapist. Like, I have a nice business, but I'm not wealthy at all. I'm not at that status I grew up with or that I had in my first marriage. And I'm okay with that. So my daughters have seen that and hopefully seen me as a woman working and earning and who has to be careful to make things happen. And then they have a very different life with their dad, but they've also gone to a big public school and they have friends who have a lot of money. They have friends who don't have a lot of money. So they've had a much more normal experience. And what I am trying as a mom constantly, I'm always saying, I don't care what you do, have something where you make your own money, however much or little, because it's so important for you. I'm not saying that's right for everyone. That's my own personal belief based on my journey, what I'd love for them to have, and save your money now. If I would have invested money then, my financial picture could be so different. I'm faced with the reality, like, I don't even know what my retirement situation will be. The good news is I have a lot of energy and I don't even want to stop working.
Yeah.
And I may not be able to, but I just changed the game. And I just want to say to anybody out there that may have gone through a financial hard time or a bankruptcy, like, you are not alone.
Oh my gosh.
It's so much more common.
I was going to say this too when you stopped with your thought, because I think that sometimes seeing somebody that has done something that you are going through makes it so much easier. And you guys, she is not the exception.
No,
I've
so
talked
common.
about both of my parents for different reasons had to file bankruptcy. My mom, because of my medical bills. My dad had a partner in his business early on that did some really not honest things. And he left my dad holding the bag. And so my dad had to file bankruptcy. And I think that it is, give yourself, no one wants to go through that, but it is hitting the reset button. It should be, the action you take because there is nothing else you can do.
Right.
But know that there is a very bright future on the other side of it, and don't feel shame about your situation. It is, I sit down with people, and also that you said you didn't realize that you grew up, what you were experiencing was not middle class.
No, and was not normal.
Well, and I said all the time, women will say, oh my gosh, this is what I have. And I'm probably your smallest client, or I'm probably, and I tell them all the time, I promise you, you are doing so well.
So much better than you think.
So much better than you think.
Yeah.
And you have to believe it, because somebody that is empowered with the confidence that they've made the right moves is going to continue to make the right moves instead of second guessing. Bet on yourself, you know? And I'm going through this right now with my niece. My kiddos are young. So we haven't started talking about this yet, but my niece is like my practice child, and she is applying to colleges and doing all of that right now. And her dad feels one way about student loan debt and has said, do anything you can to avoid it, where I had some student loan debt. Mm-hmm. And so I'm watching the conversation with him and how now it's making her a little nervous. And now I'm coming in as the aunt saying, bet on yourself. You are meant for huge things. Don't take more than you need. But that just goes to show that
invest in yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And what you teach your kids or model and emulate, even if you think that you're not modeling money behaviors, you are.
Yes.
So just be aware of that when you're talking and listening, and because you're building a precedence for them that they're going to carry with them for the rest of their lives until they meet someone like you, potentially, or maybe forever.
Yes.
Right. So just be mindful of that, because everybody's money journey has an origin story, and make sure that the one that your kids are sitting around a Thanksgiving table as a guest with the new girlfriend or with friends from college is a good one. I didn't grow up with, my mom having a ton of money, but I remember a lot of the great things from that. And I tell the story where if she were telling it, she'd say, I was so budgeted and
She
I
was
feel like
stressed.
but she didn't, but she was very careful to model it in a way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just keep that in mind.
Yeah. And, one of the beautiful things about being a therapist is you do hear so much of the underneath from so many different people. And you come to find that we're all struggling with the same things. I have clients who have so much money and they grew up dirt poor and they're still really scared. I have people who grew up with tons of money and feel exactly the way I do, that it wasn't a good thing. Or people who grew up with I have a client who had a billionaire father, but he literally drove around in a Ford station wagon and made the kids work. And so there's so many different ways and different experiences, but we're all a little bit afraid around these things. Money is security. Money is freedom. And I think it's one of those things, just like our marriages, that we often don't talk about. And this is why I wanted to just normalize that we can mess up and come back from
and
it.
Be different and never
be
be on
better.
the same page,
Yep.
but still be a cohesive unit.
Yes.
It's wild to see that, people's perception is often their undoing. And I think it's really important to just have grace. You never know what somebody's story has made them do or become.
Or what they've been through. Yeah. It's so true.
And just always try our best. Clients will say, oh my goodness, well, I'm sure that, other people don't have as many problems that you have to come in and fix. And I'll tell you what, guys, I've never sat down with someone where I've said, there's nothing I can do here. You are all set. Everybody has room for improvement. The two of us, anybody listening, nobody's getting it all right. And I think that once you accept that, it makes things a lot easier to build in a
couldn't agree
way.
more. I could not agree more.
So your kiddos are obviously so lucky to be having the experience that they are. What do you think that if you could go back to the 20-year-old version of yourself, you would say to her about money or finances that would have saved you a little bit of heartache?
Yeah, I would tell that younger self, this money that you're spending and enjoying, somebody really worked hard to make this possible. This does not come out of the ether.
There's no money tree. Well, there is, but it doesn't print dollar bills.
No. And, my parents are wonderful people, and I wasn't raised to be snobbish or flippant in any way. I just didn't know how hard. All of my grandparents are immigrants and came from nothing and worked their way to tremendous success. I have a really good work ethic. So do my parents. So that part was there. But I would tell that girl, take that work ethic and also think about what you're earning and what you could start doing today so that you are always good, you're always taking care of you, and you're not relying on anyone else. Because I think that's where we can get in trouble. At the end of the day, emotionally, financially, no matter how great your relationships, you are the only one who's coming to save you, and we have to operate that way.
That is so true. And money is a tool that allows you to leave situations
that aren't good for you.
Amen. Friendships, jobs, marriages, family situations, whatever it is, it's a tool.
Absolutely. And that's probably, I think, the best thing about money is that it gives you choices in life.
That's it.
So you just inspired me to go work some more.
Where can people follow along? Where can they buy your book? You've got a podcast.
Yes.
How do they continue to follow and learn from you?
Oh, I would love to hear from anyone and everyone. So first of all, my book, The Cost of Quiet, is available wherever books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, you name it. Also my website, ColetteJaneFehr.com. Colette has one L and two T's, and Fehr is Fehr. And then I have a podcast, Insights from the Couch, which is for women at midlife that I definitely want you to come on.
I'd love to.
And it's on all the platforms. And then another podcast called Love Thy Neighbor, a relationship show. We're also locally in Orlando on Real Radio 104.1 in the evenings on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. with Tom and Dan from Real Radio, who a lot of people may know. So that's super fun. And I've got a great TEDx talk if you want like a little digestible nugget of the book, which is called Secrets from a Couples Therapist. And you can find that on Google. Yeah. So I really do think that the feedback I'm getting from the book so far is great. I made this simple and actionable, and so that I could help people, more people than I can see in my office. So I hope everyone will give it a shot and let me know what you think.
I was going to say, I would love, and we'll include all of that in the show notes. But if you guys read something from this and have like a success story or something that you took from it, please share. Tag us both. And yeah, I'm going to do the same. I can't wait to read, and I'm going to make my husband read it too. And he just doesn't know it yet.
It's going to be great.
Well, thank you so much, obviously, to my guest, Colette, for joining, and also to all the listeners. I get so much joy from this and am always so thankful that you choose to spend a little bit of your precious time with me. And with that, let's continue to change the way women think and feel about money together.